Trading the foreign exchange market carries high risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Trading on margin, utilizing leverage can carry an even higher level of risk that can lead to a complete loss of investment funds. So before deciding to trade the foreign exchange market or using any of our software alert products, you should carefully and diligently consider your personal investment objectives, level of experience, and risk tolerance. There is a possibility that you could potentially sustain significant loss. You should not invest any capital or trade that you cannot afford to lose. It is your responsibility to be aware of and understand all risks associated with foreign exchange trading and to seek professional advice from an independent certified financial advisor if you have any doubts. Auvoria Prime does not exercise trading authority over your trades. You and you alone exercise discretionary trading authority over every trade.
Forex calendar this week talked Saturday about the fact that Chairman Powell has been speaking. Nothing earth-shattering coming out of yesterday. It's today, obviously Tuesday the 23rd. Keep in mind that there's a lot of red folder events this week, so that's what you want to be aware of. Looking at today the 23rd, Powell's going to be speaking Wednesday the 24th as well. This is really just testifying. If you're ever not sure what's going on, you can always just click the red folder event. This is really just CARES Act in front of the Senate Banking Committee. Do understand this is one of the more powerful groups of all the knuckleheads in Washington. You know, getting appointed and or being on this committee is pretty big as far as controlling what goes on in banking regulation, all that fun stuff, where obviously Treasury Secretary Yellen, who used to be the Fed chairman, right? Very qualified lady for this role. That is it for US-based red folder. We have the Swissy event tomorrow from Swiss National Bank, Euro Summits all day on Friday. I have no idea. This could be the real sort of strange, I mean, it's kind of like a Davos type event. I don't really know what they're going to cover. You know, you always want to be on the lookout, as I mentioned, for any Q&A, which is where things can always go off the rails, depending on what central banker says it. But most of them, including Christine Lagarde and, you know, Mario Draghi used to be the European Central Bank. You know, these people are very reserved in what they say, but, you know, it's like anything else. I mean, any types of trading going on, whether you're accepting trades or the software is automatically executing trades for you, you need to be aware of these events and make sure you understand whether or not the software turns off or not, right? The variable you got to pause, and the other pieces of software, you know, have varying degrees of when they'll stop. You can adjust the settings, right? So just be aware of that. Now, do know that I'm just begun communication with Killian. He is the developer of Stratomus, so I'm going to get a chance this week. I've already gone through some of his videos. I'm going to go through some of the ones that I've been given private access to on the cloud. Really good guy. I mean, it genuinely wants to, along with all the developers, but it's great to see a guy jump on board that just really genuinely wants to help people. And, you know, he's based in Thailand, so his time's is a little different. Obviously, he's GMT +7 there in Thailand. So just be aware of that. But, you know, get into his, let me just drag this in, so I think it's important. Telegram's our primary form of communication other than email. So this is the, so this is the Stratomus Traders chat. This is in that link as well. So I don't have any news as far as when this is going to come out or anything. I just want to show you guys that. You'll have the main channel and then all the other channels, obviously, but just a heads up on all that. All right, so that's it for Forex Factory. If you have any questions, Q&A. Otherwise, it's going to be a pretty short call today. Let's go into the charts. S&P. Standard & Poor's 500 index, the 500 largest capitalized countries in the U.S. All the big names, they're here. Almost all-time highs. Less the case with tech-heavy NASDAQ, which is the mostly tech-laden, a lot of biotech type index. Okay. QQQ is a different version of that. Chart looks the same. Not making new highs, making lower highs right now, right? 7-10 year, a little bit of a rally for the last couple of days. TLT, which is a longer US Treasury bond ETF. I use ETFs to to look at this just because it's easier to see and aggregate volume and data because these ETFs are super liquid and they're exceptionally actively traded with, in many cases, millions and millions of shares traded every day. These are representation products for the US bond market in these two pieces. So essentially a 4-day rally. We've been one time framing up in bonds. So I think that is somewhat corresponded slightly erratically in 4 days of moving slightly higher, except for yesterday. In the dollar, the daily chart, DXY is representation of an amalgamation of about 6 large majors, mostly being of which the euro and the yen pound comprise the biggest chunk of this. So again, still stuck in the range right underneath what is now a declining line. Looking like we may start to tag 92.5. So the purpose of showing with a lot of new subscribers, again, welcome. We've had a lot of people join Auvoria. So make sure if my calls are new to you and you have an up and down line that may not be as plugged in, tell them about these calls. Make sure you spread the word. That's the best thing you can do for your team, other than sort of getting them in some sort of motivation to go through the AP Academy. I continually see a lot of questions get asked in many chat rooms. I'm slightly monitoring the variable chat room. And the vast majority of these questions could be answered by just going into the AP Academy. It's not some long drawn out thing, guys. It's actually really cool. And you can really benefit from that because as you guys will see me talk about in every one of these calls, including the big 24 live event in April, where we're all going to be broadcasting from Tennessee, we'll be talking about the same thing. I mean, it's all about risk. It's going to be in different forms, but the people that are the most educated in this industry, as far as professional traders and a lot of really good amateurs, they've spent countless hours. But the great thing about Auvoria, and for that matter, any good trading or education coach, is that they can help you cut the learning curve a lot, like in some cases by 3/4. But you still need to do a little bit of work. So I'll throw this out to you. What if somebody said to you something like the following? This is 100% true. What if you could put 7 or to 10, maybe even 20 hours in and potentially earn the type of income that a general physician in your country earns a year? Most people are like, well, really? How? Well, pay attention to everything we're talking about. Pay attention to the developers. And, once you are trading enough capital, you have the ability to do really well. And don't let your hearts be troubled if you, suffer drawdown or you get in loss. The vast majority of my biggest students that came to me way before I was ever in the Forex game with AP or in the Forex games, is talking like way back in like 2010, 11, 12, when I first opened up my trading education consultancy, which is a company called FXCS Trader. I routinely, among my largest students, had people that come to me after they blew up 200 or 300K. Now, obviously, they had the money to blow up, right? Not everybody's got that. But do understand the best ones came back and educated themselves, and in many cases made far more back than any of those numbers. As scary as that may seem, but many of them were not willing to leave their ego at the door. They were not willing to educate themselves. They were not willing to understand the very basic metrics of risk, right? Which essentially is as simple as don't trade with capital you can't afford to lose. Don't put on risky trades. Always understand where your stop loss is if you're manually trading. And stick to that. Have many teeny little losses and let the big gainers move, right? And they can far cover the losses that you'll have. The problem is with many people, and it's unfortunately a sad event, is that they don't have the mental capacity to be able to come back from loss, okay? And this is where the NCAA Division I superstar, or whatever your country's top university athletes can do that many of the other second and third tier athletes can't. In many cases, yes, some of them have superior talent, but in a vast majority of cases, they were just grinders. And that's how they got really good at what they did, right? And there's a lot of people in the NFL that may not be super talented, but they've been just such massive grinders that they put in twice the effort of everybody else, and they became successful, right? And I understand, there's obviously superstars out there like, Cristiano Ronaldo and Tiger Woods and a lot of the women in tennis that are superstars, and they really have the it factor, right? But everybody else out there in trading land, you can totally be successful if you put the time in. And the beautiful thing about now versus 15 years ago, when it was like the open frontier of craziness, is there are organizations like AP. I feel this is one of the best out there, but there are organizations that really put together a structured learning program. I mean, look at Arrow. I mean, look at the ridiculous amount of contributions inside that chat room. I mean, it's beautiful to see, right? That's taught a lot of people how to trade. And so I think that those are all things you can sort of take from. But best thing about everybody coming in now is that if they pay attention to a little bit of background and maybe put 10, 15 hours into this, you're gonna have a really good handle of how to understand, like especially if you're starting off like an Arrow, or maybe you're splitting your access pass between a Neo and an Arrow, or maybe you're fortunate enough to bring a whole bunch of people in. You have all kinds of access passes, right? Eventually access to everything from Gearbox, Stratomus, Neo, right? Understand the settings that each of those softwares bring to the table. Some require a lot less maintenance than others, but don't let that be a reason why you don't put the time in to understand what's going on. You don't have to participate in every one of my calls every week, but I think it's going to put you far more ahead. So Euro USD, I am down off of my political soapbox. So let's talk about the Euro USD. So now, for the first time in a while, okay, since what, 9th of March, we're back at this big line. This is the 200-day. This is the daily chart here. 200-day moving average. I'm not as concerned whether it's an EMA or SMA. But the point is that it's, in this case, just a generic 200 close, okay? You can see right here. If you ever want to see the settings for any of these, just click on the little settings gearbox or gear. So we're at this, and will it hold? I don't know the answer to that. My suspicion is it's going to take the end of this week. Could be wrong. Somebody could say something wrong. It can blast through here, right? But we've had too many of the shorts on the dollar in almost any form. We've had a rally in the dollar and a pullback, everything dollar related, with the exception of GBP USD, which is pulled back a little bit. And the reason for this particular move is that we were in a big trend up here and we got really stretched. Okay, went up, blew some stops, noticed some higher volume, obviously on these sell-offs. It usually tells you, or that's somewhat of a hint that it may be contained a little bit, depending on what's going on. Sure enough, it came right back up against that, which has been a resistance. But just looking at the Euro USD, that's kind of what I'm thinking here. What else? Let's move on to Euro GBP. If you want me to look at any pairs, just throw it in the Q&A. Still down consolidating. Okay. Euro JPY, same thing. Consolidating in a small, tight range here. But we've had a pretty big, a little more of a protracted move just in the last day. You're always just wondering, well, how did this move take place? I always jump back to the original, right? See that at least dollar-based Euro is obviously weaker. Relations or correlates to the jump, obviously, in the dollar. You can argument that with some of the comments that have been coming out of some of these central bank meetings the next couple of days. Obviously, the Senate Banking Committee meeting with Jerome Powell's attending today. GBP CAD, We're back down, coming up onto what I would think would be some pretty solid support. This currency has been a little wilder recently. Trying to see the trend line here. Once you see something break from, in this case, the resistance point just right here above the spot 744 area, the market begins to take off up. Notice it came back for a day, dipped down under, but finished above the line, right? This is your clue right here, this candle that I'm pointing at. This is your clue that we're more than likely headed up, because we dipped the toe in the water. We found buyers, institutional support, somebody's defending the area, whatever you want to call it. We're headed higher. That's when I start the trend up, if I'm on a trend soft or something like that. So it just stays on trend until it breaks the bottom of the line, right? You can move it like something like that if you want to keep it tighter. Right, it's essentially we broke trend with these, and then we started trending down. So you could literally just draw draw these trend lines down if you need the assistance of a line. But I try to just show you how to just to picture it. You can have all kinds of things overlaid on your charts that will automatically draw all these lines for you. But all they're really doing is just mucking up the charts, right? It's just getting all muddy. So I usually just like to look at a clean chart. That's why a lot of the charts that I post are just very clean. We just have moving average lines, support and resistance, and candles. Volume at the bottom. I don't have any RSI or stochastics or any of that crazy stuff, because it's just everybody reads it differently. And honestly, I'm trying to keep this very big picture for a very large subscriber base that in many cases is very uneducated on technical analysis. I just want you guys to learn the basics. You can certainly go into my channel, take a look at the chart patterns as an additional resource, but master this type of analysis first. CAD CHF, same thing. Steep trend up. Again, daily chart you want to look at starting off. You certainly can always look at 4-hour charts on this stuff, right? To glean maybe a little bit more depth. I would get away until you've mastered larger times. I would get away from dropping down into hours, right? Unless you're trading arrow. Then you want to be paying attention to some of the smaller time frames. But getting your education, essentially starting off with the higher time frames like the day or even the weekly chart, which is what I always go to see when, in this particular case, we're in from a daily perspective. If I drop back to the daily chart here, and we're in nosebleed section, right? So then you go to the weekly to determine if there's any support and resistance levels. The big area up here is the 7610-ish area. I'm pretty sure that's where we're headed. I'm probably going to be sooner versus later. Now, the more than likely from a weekly perspective, the 7353-ish area is support. So from the standpoint of a software that you can adjust to trending versus non-trending settings, this one I would have in a trend up setting, or I should say a trend setting. Pound franc dollar, or a pound franc daily chart here as well. Tight range. Honestly, there should be a squeeze zone line printed right here, right in this 2774-ish area. It's probably going to hold this. We've got a lot of dojis, so this would have me thinking that we put a fair amount of balance in. More than likely, we're either going to come back down and test a little bit lower, right? I'm not sure why do I. Yeah, you know what? I think I said this wrong. Yeah, I got it moved around. This is the half-ass long-term trend line I drew here on this lime green line. Double check this, because it could certainly come back down and offer this, which almost perfectly lines up with. Yeah, so I think if we came back down, we'd be trending down, and I'd start to look to see if the trend would end right around this 2610 area, somewhere in that area. It's a fair amount of travel, obviously, if this top holds, right? Trying to just show you guys how to spot maybe a change in trend versus a pause and resume the trend upward potentially in this, right? Pounds gained a lot of strength, as you can see, just since the bottom of March, but ideally it's sort of back to, I don't know, equilibrium, if you will, of where it used to trade in pre-pandemic levels. GBP JPY. Now, let's go to the weekly on this. I haven't spent too much time on this because it's just kind of murky. I'd still be looking for a test of this 155.60-ish area, all the way in about maybe 50, 60-ish area here. US CAD. Surprising chart given a lot of the other stuff going on out there. This is just a weekly chart, by the way, because in daily you're getting really a small resistance point here at that 24.40-ish area. But if we drop up to a higher time frame, you could see that the 23 area is big, real big. It's got to hold. Believe it or not, at one point these currencies used to be at par, which is $1 even. Way back in 2014. That was the time to go to Canada and buy Cuban cigars. In any case, that is that. Let's take a look at the Aussie daily first. Pretty tight range. Aussie's been strong, as you can see. Corresponding to the weakness in the US dollar. Take a look at the weekly. Pretty big area up here that may have capped the move up for a period of time, depending on whether or not the dollar continues its descent. We've got essentially $2 to drop in DXY before the dollar continues a potential descent to a much lower value, somewhere in the 85 to 87 range is what some of the smartest currency strategists out there, and I'm certainly not those guys, but I am on board with that forecast and agreement. All right, so that GBP NZD. Let's drop back to the daily. Notice our bigger move. It's pretty big. So, the extended ranges. Remember, I shown you guys on Saturday, if you recall, the research that Dasan had done in Variables chat. It's available in the chat room. I think I posted the link to it as well, but talks about all the currency pairs, their win rates, and their ranges, and the fact that the GN here has a huge range, one of the largest, and we're seeing a little bit of that today. So I know that the win rates with many of our software programs have been really good on this, especially in Variable. Just understand that even though it may have an 80% win rate, which is kind of bananas in my opinion, it's dangerous. Let's see what else. US Swiss, did I show this? I think ultimately looking for the 95 area. Cool. So if you guys want, give me some ideas before I wrap this up here. If you want anything. So on the 24th of April, I'm going to be a very small piece of
our largest international event. We'll be broadcasting from a really cool studio in Nashville. I'm going to have about a 45-minute to maybe an hour window, maybe a little bit shorter, to talk about what's important. So questions, and actually, I think I forgot about the Euro AUD. Let me just take a look at that. Forget about that. Trend down still. Notice this is one of the first tests today of that top of that trend line. It's pulled back from it so far. Okay, so here I'll show you. Probably extend these lines down, but doesn't have to be perfectly drawn. But it's the first time in a while we've extended what may not be the best drawn trend line, but we've pulled back from it. This is actually a pretty decent short opportunity on this trade. Anytime you're in a trend down, as long as you got the trend lines drawn, somewhat decent, you get a rip into one of these areas, and we haven't touched in a while, it's usually an excellent opportunity to short. Or in long, like down here. So we touch the line, getting a bit extended on the trend down. It's a good opportunity for a rally. Some much lower risk trades that could be taken manually. I don't know the guys trading Arrow if they mess around with Euro AUD or not, but I'm more than likely this would have been a short I would have taken. It'd have been a great trade. Let's jump back. Dollar, our daily chart. The problem with this right here is that, let me just drop back to weekly. Try and get a better look at this. From a weekly perspective. I'll tell you, if this 5250-ish area, some fairly decent range down here, this can hold. And we could spend some time here, and obviously looking at a weekly chart, so there would really need to be some time that elapsed. But we could be looking at a balance area down here for a while versus continuing to trend down. You got to go way back into 2018 to see. And we bounced right off a long-term support almost to the tick. See that right there? This line, maybe they're hard to see, but it's 5275 area. Pretty solid. Should hold us for a while, maybe a few weeks, in which case, obviously you wouldn't want to have this currency in a trending based unless you trade it on much shorter time frames. But any daily time frame, we may be starting to balance out down here along the bottom. This is where these martingale systems perform really well for just bouncing in a tight range throughout a period of time. It's taking trades at the high of the range and low, and waiting for it to essentially to mean revert back to the center as far as trading. Maybe one to look to turn the trend off on this one, or at least we've gotten a few clues that I could be right. You always know you can be wrong. All right, so what else is I going to talk about? So if you guys have any subjects that you want me, you don't have to answer today, but if you want me subjects you want me to cover on the April 24th discussion, we'll talk a lot about risk. I'm going to talk about brokers, talk about, we've had some obviously much more clarity surrounding our whole new compliance and guidelines for posting stuff and all that. So really, but the key to the big picture of risk, is that you want to be able to analyze your results. You want to be able to have obviously gone through the AP Academy. That's why you'll see a lot of here. Just looking under my Auvoria link, right?
I mean, I got a lot of FX books hooked up, personal accounts, so forth, developers, all that, because it's a great way to analyze the results of anything that's going on. I try not to show too much of this, as I think this confuses a lot of people, but I really would highly encourage, if you get past, sign it up and get your access pass to whatever software you're using. Set up a MyFX Books, or you can set up an FX Blue. Either way, you can at least analyze. And do keep in mind, Auvoria has nothing to do with your brokerage account. We, as an organization, we knew who the best brokers are globally, and we may be able to talk about that a little bit more down the road. But for now, we still sort of had a gag order on that, because it's really not our job to tell you where to open up a brokerage account. Honestly, it's really no big secret if you talk to your upline or downline who the best brokers are. You want to focus on straight through processors that are mostly just electronic execution houses, and they're A-book, right? You don't want to have a B-book broker. And there are ways inside MT4 to check to see if you're being B-booked, which is essentially being gamed against, in my opinion. Ask your up and down line, who are the best brokers to deal with. There's about 5 or 6 of them on that list globally that we deal with, and they're all pretty good. Albeit some say they're all A-book, but they do a little B-booking hybrid. So you just want to be aware of that. And I guess my hope is at some point that we'll be able to recommend a few brokers directly, but that's still a gray area. But I'll talk a little about the difference between A and B book and risk, and a few little motivation things as well. All right, guys, that is it for me. Any questions on content you want to see down the road, just put it in the Q&A window on any of my calls coming up. But if you guys don't have any questions, I will see you Saturday morning. May the trades be with you.